This is the Making Waves Mindset Show with your hosts, Richard Biase
and Dave Moskowitz. Learn from our journey as we share the ups and downs
of being your own boss.
Okay, welcome everyone to the Making Waves Mindset Show.
Welcome. Thanks for joining us again. Make sure you subscribe to our show. Today we have a fantastic guest, Fares Halteh. Did I pronounce it right?
Yeah, you did.
Fares
I think
Halteh. Okay.
It depending on the audience, there's different pronunciations. It's like a Middle Eastern name.
Yeah.
So if I'm like with Arabs and I say, "Oh, my name's Fares," sometimes they'll correct me. They'll be like, "No, it's not. That's not how you pronounce it."
So what would be Egyptian is your background, right?
Palestinian.
Oh, Palestinian.
Yeah,
so what would be the Palestinian pronunciation of your full name?
So like the way I suppose my parents would say it would be more like Faddis.
Faddis.
Yes. Yeah. And then a lot of Arabs that just meet me, they'll pronounce like, I guess another common name, Middle Eastern names like Faras. So they'll say Faras. So I have to like correct them, be like, oh, it's not exactly like that. And then I get stuck in this weird thing sometimes. I don't know if, I assume it doesn't happen with a Dave or a Richard, but you ever like introduce yourself to someone and they mispronounce your name or address you by the wrong name, and if you don't correct them right away, you're like you're stuck.
Yeah.
And then it's like progressively you get deeper and deeper down this hole. I remember I switched to a new school from grade 7 to 8, and I'd introduced myself to someone who ended up becoming a really good friend of mine, but at the time he I guess he didn't hear me correctly, and he referred to me as Francis, and it was like a really quickly I didn't correct him right away, and then I was like, oh crap, like I gotta fix this, and he said it a few more times, and then like it was like later in the day he said it around somebody else, and the other person was like, that's not his name, you idiot, like why are you calling him that? And then it kind of like it turned back to me.
Yeah, it's like, why did you let me call you Francis? Why'd you tell me your name was Francis?
Oh man,
you know what's funny? I have a similar story. I was at a restaurant, and we had been going to this restaurant for years. And me and my wife were sitting there, and the waiter comes over, and we're talking to him. His name is Scott, and probably about 20 minutes into us being there, a guy from the table beside us gets up to leave, pays his bill, and he's like, "Good night, Adam." And I'm like, you just called the waiter Adam. So I call the waiter over. I'm like, hey, I'm sorry. I've been calling you Scott for the last 5-6 years that we've been coming here. And that guy just called you Adam. I'm so sorry. He goes, no. That guy's an asshole. I told him my name for the last 4 years that he's been coming here. And he keeps on calling me Adam.
Oh, that's funny.
Well, listen, we're happy to have everyone on board the name game here. It's it's fun. On the Making Wave show, this is how we get going in our business life, and we want to have the opportunity for all of you to dream bigger and to make waves in life. Maybe that's how we do it, Dave. We come up with different names, and
that's right. Yeah, just remember, this is the Making Waves Mindset Show. We won't call it anything else. I'm Dave. This is Richard. And today we have Faddis.
Well, if it's your first time listening to the show, everyone, it's been an incredible community. It's been a great tribe. We've had so many incredible people on the program who have left the 9-to-5, who have challenged their mindset, who have taken action in life. And Fares is going to be an incredible example of that. We're really excited to dive in, and let's go from there. Fares, tell us about you, a little background about yourself, and life in the 9-to-5, working for the big corporate machine.
Okay, right on. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know how far back I should go here, but
you were diapers or
okay. So, my first waking memory.
The memoirs.
You know what? I think a lot of it would have started maybe like high school, or even a little bit before high school. Sort of. I was born in 82, and probably around the mid 90s is around the time the internet was starting to become this thing that you get at your house and all that. And parents bought me my first computer. Eventually we got it connected to the internet, and I was like totally like into it. Internet nerd, messaging.
Hotmail.com.
Yeah.
MSN
AOL
Messenger.
Instant Messenger.
AOL Instant.
Right. Yeah. And that kind of got me down the whole path of like getting into technology and things like that. I think like after my parents bought me my first computer, the second one, I was like obsessed with this idea that I'm going to build my own computer. So researching, what parts I needed, buying all the pieces, putting it all together. And I was actually like probably more into that aspect of the tech and even less about like using it. Like I'd be the person who would like build and troubleshoot and like do all the sort of maintenance on the technology in our house, whereas my brothers and sisters would be the ones like playing the games and enjoying it. But I was more interested in like, I want to open this up and see what's going on inside, right?
Yeah.
It's very like, I want to see how things work sort of thing. And I think that that got me down the path of like getting into technology. So when I did graduate from high school, eventually went to York University. I ended up doing a degree in information technology, and I had it in my head that I was really into like obviously the tech, but more on the telecom side. So how do these computers communicate with one another? How does the whole internet work? So I was like really interested in computer networking, setting up, installing, securing telecom networks. So the degree that I got from York was in IT, which was nice, but I never really learned anything there that was going to specifically help me with any job that I got. Like one thing I noticed fairly quickly at York, they were teaching a lot of like high level concepts and general idea of how things work, but you weren't going to graduate from university and know how to configure a router or secure a network or any of
it's the black and white. It's the textbook,
Right.
There's no hands-on learning.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I probably would have been better served with maybe going to college or more of a sort of hands-on degree. But I also I recognized this fairly early, and I also noticed that I needed to sharpen my skills as far as being useful to any company that did hire me. And at the time, Cisco still is a really big company in the telecom space, but at the time they were like the leader. And if you wanted any job in telecom, knowing how to configure, install, secure Cisco routers and switches was like of paramount importance. So at the time Cisco had they have these certification paths. Like you can get your associate degree or your professional degree or your expert degree, and there's sort of like ways up this pyramid, and the top would have been the internet working expert. So all of these certifications more or less work the same way. You have to take an exam. It's like a multiple choice exam. You do it in front of a computer. There'd be like maybe 50 to 100 questions, and you have to score like 80 or better or something like that.
Oh, wow.
And I'd become like sort of obsessed with climbing this ladder of getting all these certifications. Even before I applied for a job, I was on the cusp of graduating from university. And another good high school friend of mine who'd been kind of doing similar to what I was doing was also, in the same shoes as me. So we said, hey, let's see how far we can get with these certs. And the top level certification, the internet working expert one, is like kind of was at the time referred to as like the holy grail of like certifications that you can get in the IT space. Whereas all the exams that you've done up to this point, you can go to a test center in town, get in front of a computer, do the exam. This one was different in that it was a practical exam. So there was only you actually have to go to a Cisco office, and they only had 8 locations in the world where you could take the exam. They didn't have any in Canada.
In the whole world?
Yeah, in the whole world. 8 in the whole world.
Jeez.
So not in Canada.
None in Canada. There was 2 of them were in the United States. So those would have been the ones that made the most sense for me. So there was one in it was just outside of San Francisco. Maybe it was Sacramento. I don't remember exactly, but wherever Cisco has a big office out west. And then the other one was on the east side in RTP, Research Triangle Park, Raleigh, North Carolina. And that one made the most sense. So my buddy and I were like, we're going to get our CCIE and we're going to do it before we even apply for a job, which was kind of unheard of. Like typical like CCIE would have been somebody who's been working in the IT industry for 10 to 15 years of like networking experience, kind of built up their portfolio, and then they actually try to take the exam. And the exam's like brutal. It's like, I think it was like $1,500 to $2,000 US. If you book it, there's almost like a 4 to 6 month waiting list to actually take the exam. And like I said, you got to fly there. So, you fly in a day or two early, you get a hotel room. It's a whole thing. And then the day of, you get there. It's an 8-hour practical lab exam. So you get into the test center, you're in front of a computer, and next to you, you have a whole rack of networking equipment. And then you basically have a lab guide. And essentially, they present you with a computer network that is like half working, but they've intentionally gone in and screwed up a bunch of things inside of it. So, and obviously they don't tell you what those things are, but you open up the lab book and they'll say, okay, like step 1, we need to establish a connection between this router and that router. And you go through the whole process and you do the exam, and it's, very stressful, whatever. But, by some luck, my buddy and I both flew out there. We both took the exam and we both passed. And we were like,
wow.
I mean, yeah, we were very fortunate, I guess. And and it was also kind of like a lot of planning and preparation and hard work had culminated to this one moment that we'd been preparing for. Like we probably nerded out on this stuff for like 2 years straight of just every day. We would get together. There was a study place that we would go to, like in Toronto. So one of us we'd carpool and we would go every day and just study for like 8 hours a day, and that's all we did. We were like super, like we were obsessed with this idea that we were going to get this certification. And so, like I said, we went there, we passed the exam, and it was like, wow, amazing. Like it was felt more like satisfaction getting something like that than graduating from school or anything. I felt like a lot of the schooling, that I had done up to this.
Like, you saw the effort you put in to get it. Where school, it's like, here's this task, just go do this. You actually sought this goal, and on our show, we want people to take action. So you took action with your friend and you did it. I can see that.
I mean, like passing the exam was like one of the greatest feelings ever. And then it was like, and I knew, like I had a mentor at the time, an older cousin of mine who'd gone down a similar path. Like he'd been working in telecom for a lot longer than I had, older guy. And he basically was the one that said to me, like, hey, if you want to get a job, get your CCIE and all the doors will be open to you. Like you will not have a problem, especially as an entry level position. Everyone's going to be like stunned at the fact that you even have this. So that's part of what, why I did it. So I got, we both passed the exam, and it just so happened that the company that my cousin worked for, Dimension Data at the time, was a big South American company, but they had presence all over the world. And they were expanding their operation into Canada. And I passed the exam in May, and they had like just opened up in Canada in like March or April of that year. It was literally, they had like a manager, a salesperson. I think there was like 4 people. I think I was actually employee number 7 now that I think about it. Cause I remember my employee number was like 007, which I thought was pretty cool.
I was just going to say that 007.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah. So I was this kind of young kid right out of school. I was in my mid 20s, and I got hired by this place. Everyone I worked for had been in the industry for like 10 or 15 years. It was a small group of us, but I was kind of like the kid in the group. And part of them having a footprint in Canada, there was all these requirements for them to get more specializations and certifications and things of that nature. So I got the job, and for the first 2 years, I did almost nothing but just study and write exams for them, because they said, hey, if we can get this telephony certification, it's going to give us 15% off all the hardware that we buy from this vendor. Like, go study this and do this. So
Right.
it wasn't like, it was easy for me because I'd essentially kept doing what I was doing for the last like 3 or 4 years, but now I was getting paid to do it. So it's like, this is awesome. Like, now I'm like going to school and I'm getting paid. And the best part is I don't have to pay for the exams. Like, that was another really stressful thing about, you know, being in schools. Like, I had to pay so much money to take courses, exams, buy material. Even for the CCIE, for me to prepare for it, I had to buy all the equipment to build a lab. And that equipment, brand new from Cisco, you could easily drop like 50 grand on it. And like, obviously I didn't have that money. So I was cobbling together like pieces that I can get on eBay and putting together these, you know, whatever I could do to make things work and try to recreate some semblance of a lab in my house, right?
You know, Fares, you bring up a great point. Dave and I have discussed this. We've had guests talk about it. It's that constant push, go to school, get education, but you don't have money to pay for the education. And it's almost like this is the fault of the North American or the Western education system. Yeah. And then these students end up in massive debt. They didn't have the money to go take this, you know, piece of paper qualification to begin with. And then they leave getting frustrated at everyone else because they're working at a coffee shop for the next 10 years, right? And it's, you know, I'm not trying to paint a weird picture here, but it is an effing weird picture. It's like, if you don't have the money, don't do it, because you're digging yourself a hole. But in your situation, it seems like you found that job that then just ended up paying for you to continue to get those qualifications. But I just thought it was very interesting. You said something that we always hear our guests say. There was no money and I had to do it.
I just want to also touch on another thing that helped you along that process. You mentioned your cousin being a mentor of yours. And we talk about that a lot, is having that person that is ahead of us by either a decade, 2 decades, or have even a year, or who's an expert in those areas, and having them as a mentor. Look how much that excelled yourself within that industry within a short period of time because you had that mentor there. So important.
Absolutely, Dave. I couldn't agree more. And I think the point that you're touching on there is kind of, I'm going to actually maybe circle back to that a little bit later in this conversation, but seeing somebody actually do something that maybe you didn't know was possible or was even a thing kind of sparks that aha moment where, hey, if they've done it, why can't I do it? And I think that's why I've always tried to surround myself with people that I always felt were, you know, that inspire me. I mean, you know, on a personal level, I think that's why you and I are so close, Dave. Me, you, and all the other sort of WAD bros. It's like we're in this group of people where every person is like, you know, doing something that's awesome, and you know, I look up to all of them, and I'm like, wow, like, and some of these guys are older than me too, so I can look at, you know, some of these other guys and say, that's awesome that I could see what I could potentially be like in 10 years from now. Whereas I think growing up, if I was looking around at a lot of, you know, family members or people around me that were, you know, by the time they were 50, they looked like they were 100, and, you know, they didn't have much time left. And now, and then, you know, I go to the gym, and, you know, I meet a guy 10 years older than me who's, you know, power cleaning more weight than me, and back squatting more weight, and, you know, doing all these, you know, gymnastics movements. And I'm thinking to myself, I remember when my dad was 50, he didn't look like that. And I'm like, I didn't know you could be 50 and still do all this stuff. So that flips a switch in your head where when you see somebody who could do something like that, you start to think to yourself, well, why can't I do that? And then once you plant that seed, you know, keep watering it, and it'll eventually get there. So
surrounding yourself with the right people is huge. Absolutely huge.
Yeah, I'm really big on that. I don't like, I think some people get intimidated if they're in a room and they feel like they're not the smartest person there. I'd prefer to be in a room where I'm not the smart. I want to like absorb as much of
very much so
from those people around me. But I just don't get excited if I'm, you know, anyways. So I guess going back to it. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, have you found with that mindset a shift in other people where there's no longer a connection with them because you want to surround yourself with the right people and other people start fading away? Have you discovered that? Because it's something I've shared openly myself, where, now you're no longer in alignment with other people because they don't share those values. And it's just like, you feel bad, but it's like they're just living a very narrow-minded path, and they're not looking at themselves to be successful in many aspects of life, whether it's family or wealth. Have you noticed that change since you decided?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I mean, look, there's still some people that, you know, that are going to be in your life that you can't necessarily get away from, whether it be, you know, family or whatever. And you'd kind of, I guess in those situations, you have to know what to expect, but those are not the people that I'm actively like seeking out to spend time with or doing. I mean, there's people that you, I suppose, put up with because of circumstance, and then people that you try to make your friends. I guess that old saying, you can choose your friends, but not your family, right? So
very much true.
Yeah, I think that's, you know, absolutely true.
Well, we'll let you get back to what you were saying.
Sure, yeah. So yeah, we're like, you know, I got this job, and it was great, and all this hard work had kind of paid off, and there was a big sort of learning process ahead of me, working for, you know, working in an office job with people who'd been doing this for a lot longer than me. I'm this young, you know, kid who really doesn't know jack all, and you know, I thought I was hot shit, but
of course
quickly learned that you know, I wasn't, and I also realized that a lot of what I had been learning was important, and it was important for me to learn how to learn, but there was a lot more that I needed to learn. It wasn't necessarily just around the sort of nuts and bolts of the technology. I'm a very like step-by-step process sort of guy. And it's like, if I have to learn something and, you know, certain soft skills that maybe I need to work on, my initial thought is like, okay, well, let me find a book on how to do that. And then I'll read it. I was like, always, I guess it's just that nerdy, like IT mind, right? So,
but on a side note, Fares helped me over text install my first outlet ever.
Oh wow, Dave!
So I have to commend your ability to segment things in process, because your text description of how to install an outlet was bang on.
Well, the fact that you're here and you've lived to tell about it is
I didn't set the condo on fire, so we're good.
Right.
I hope you charged him, Fares. I hope your hourly rate was, you know.
I got the history on my phone. I'll have to go back, run it through accounting.
So yeah, you're saying, sorry.
Yeah, but no, yeah. So I got the job, and it was good, and I was working, and you know, I ended up working for Dimension Data for just under 15 years.
Wow.
Which was great. I learned so much, and it was really nice to have a secure, like steady income right out of school. And it helped me do a lot of things that I didn't think would ever be possible. I, you know, eventually saved up enough money to move out of my parents' place, and then eventually bought my first house and did all that stuff. I guess kind of in the background here, while all this is going on, maybe one thing I should sort of like highlight is, which I kind of talked about with the whole, I was trying to get my hands on things and take things apart and all that. I think growing up, my father was like of the mindset that like, I have two boys, I have a brother, and he's like, why would I pay anyone to do any sort of manual labor? So it was always like, I'm going to put my kids to work. So
that's awesome.
We were mowing the lawn from probably like 8 years old. We probably had no business like running a lawnmower, you know, like doing any of that stuff. So I remember like my dad would come home one day with a stack of lumber and be like, we're building a deck. And it's like, well, how do we build a deck? It's like, you and your brother are going to build a deck. You got to dig holes. You got to figure this thing out. And it would take us like an entire summer, and we'd be like pissed off the whole way, but we'd eventually figure it out. And, you know, we'd build a deck in the backyard, or we're putting new hardwood flooring in the house, and we would do that. So I guess just from the fact that my dad didn't want to spend money on skilled labor, like, forced us to learn how to become handy and do a lot of these things.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed that kind of work, like being able to put in a lot of effort and time and then have something to show for it.
Yeah.
In the IT world, it kind of relates in that I can spend a lot of time in front of a computer and do things, but the output wasn't as obvious. Like you would see on a computer, like I built a network, but you're just looking at a stack of switches. Like nothing's really changed.
Connection established, but you don't see the smile on the customer's face, you know, like green light, not red light, you know?
Right. So like I'd always taken an interest in like being hands-on. And I think when I eventually bought my first place, it was back in 2012. And obviously the real estate market is a lot crazier right now, but it's all relative. I was trying to buy my first house with, you know, a $40,000 deposit, and every condo or house that I was looking at, I was getting outbid. And, you know, it was like, it took me like 6 months to finally find a place. And just by fluke, one day I was riding my bike in the city and I just saw a for sale sign on a place, you know. This is after I put my real estate agent through hell. He's taken me to like 50 places, and you know, just randomly one day I see an open house, I think, and I was like, oh, let me check this place out. And Dave, I think maybe you've been to this, but right on King and Strawn area, townhouses there. I went, I walked into this place and like right away I'm like, this is the place, because it had like pink carpets and it was just like everything about it was shit. Like it was, it looked, and the worse it looked, the happier I got, because I knew that there's going to be an opportunity here. One, a lot of these, like, you know, people who are bidding on places that have really nice amenities are probably not looking at this place. And two, I was looking, I'm like, all of this stuff I could probably fix myself.
And it's just lipstick, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. So I thought, I'll just rip out the carpets, put hardwood flooring, I'll move in, and then eventually I'll fix everything up.
Yeah.
And I saw the place for sale. I didn't want to take any chances. They were holding offers. They were like, we're not taking offers until like a Wednesday. And I came in with like an offer, I think it was like $20,000 over asking, which doesn't sound like much today. Yeah. And, you know, the lady was like, yeah, okay, I'll take it. I was like, nice. Oh my God. So I was so happy. I got the place. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to do a little, I was living in Liberty Village at the time, do a little bit of work on it. What I thought was going to be a quick little lipstick sort of job ended up taking like 6 months. So when I left my condo in Liberty Village, I actually had to move back in with my folks, because the house that I bought was just unlivable because of the mess that I'd made. So I had literally taken all my belongings, threw them in my parents' living room, and I was like, this will be here for like a month, and then I'll get it. And it was like, literally, like, I'm talking like an entire living room, which is like, and they had a big house. It's like the size of the main floor of my house. All my shit, like my mattress, my everything, right?
They loved you.
Yeah, my parents were good about it, but so while I had my IT job, and like one thing I should say that I was really fortunate with Dimension Data, because they were kind of hip to working from home, like before the pandemic. Like they were amazing. So I started the job in 2007. I remember my first day was July 9th. It was a Monday. So it was like day one. I wake up, I get dressed, shower. I'm like, all right, like let's go to work. I call my manager up. I'm like, what do I do? He's like,
where do I go?
Nothing. He's like, we mailed you a laptop. Just wait for it. So like, all right. So
that's awesome.
It was like probably a full month that I'd been working before I'd even gone to an office, right? Wow. And at the time, like they were so new, they didn't even have an office. Like they, I mean, my interview was at a Starbucks. Like they didn't even have presence like, in the city.
Crazy.
So
that's crazy.
Right. So the whole work from home thing was like totally okay with them out the gate. And most of the work that I was doing were billable hours on client sites. So I remember vividly around the time that I was doing this renovation on my house, we had a big contract with TD in Toronto, all their towers over there on like University. And we were upgrading the IP telephony system for them. So I was doing a lot of on-site work at TD, but I'd been finishing my job like pretty early. I would start like 7 or 8 a.m. and I'd be done around 12 or 1 o'clock.
Nice.
And I was living with my folks in Richmond Hill at the time. So I would drive to the city, work from 7 till 12 or whatever, grab a bite, go to my place that I bought in the city, change and all that stuff. And then just, this was like a point in my life where I didn't have kids, I didn't have a girlfriend, I didn't have a wife. It was like I could just put all my energy into whatever it is I wanted to, which was amazing. So I would go there and just work on the place from 12 till, sometimes I'd be there till like midnight, go home, crash, and that's all I did for like 6 months. Yeah. Just kept doing it. And I loved it. It was like, I'm sure at the time I was like, fuck this. I'm like, I can't do anything. I'm stressed out. The place is never finished. I'm living with my parents. But looking back at it now, it was awesome. And
but you had that goal, right? You had that goal and you were striving for it, and you're doing what it took to get to that goal, which was work the 9 to 5. Well, 8 to 12. Right. Because you were fortunate enough to have a job that, but you did the work ahead of time to get that job. That's the thing that matters, right? Is the fact that you got that special certification. You found a mentor. You were able to get into a position that gave you the time to do what you want to do, plus gave you the income to do what you wanted to do, right?
Right.
So it's that mindset. It's that mindset that you went in with it that gave you the ability to work a job and then also double time and work at home and fix your house, right?
Right. Absolutely. I was very fortunate that I had that freedom, and I had a job that allowed me to do that. And my managers were very hip in that, like, their primary focus was, are you getting your job done? Are the clients happy? And are you doing it up to the level that we expect you to do it? And, as long as I was doing all of that, nobody would really get on my back. And then also, I had my phone with me so I can check email. I've taken conference calls in any situation that you could possibly imagine, on a job site, at a baseball game, or whatever was necessary to keep things moving along. So eventually I finished the place. I moved into it. It was great. I was super happy. It's the house that my wife and I were living in when we first got married and all that. But while I was doing my IT job, one thing that started to become sort of really apparent to me over the years was that, and I know it sounds very sort of privileged of me to say this, but like, work started to feel like an inconvenience, and it was getting in the way of what I really wanted to do. And it was like, my work for me was all about maximizing the return on investment, like maximizing the return that I'm going to get with minimizing the amount of work that was necessary to do, which is so counter to how I do anything. Like, when I get
trading
into
time
something
for money,
right? I get obsessed with things. So it's like, if I want to do something, I have to do it 100%, or I can't do it at all.
Right.
And like, that was the struggle that I had with my job for probably the last 6 years that I worked there, where I was just trying to do the bare minimum, still get paid, and make everyone happy. And there was always this like nagging voice at the back of my head, like, you should just leave and do what you want. So I can honestly say, for a long period of time, I was like super miserable, because I had like the golden handcuffs. Like, if I told anybody that
we're all smiling because we have that exact same thought that you did. You got to get out of here. There's nothing here. It's not going anywhere. The golden handcuffs. Who cares? Time to move on. Like, this is like a spitting image of what Dave and I went through. Like, it's like, what are we doing here? Right. There's nothing challenging anymore. There's no goals or aspirations. You can accomplish so much more if you just walk away.
Right. And that was the sort of that was a trick for me. And it was like, how do you walk away from something when Dave can probably attest to this. There were times where I would literally work like 3 hours a day. I would wake up, so the company I worked for, I think I told you, was a South American company. eventually, as sort of things got shifted around, my manager was in South African company, based out of Johannesburg.
Oh, okay.
My manager was based out of South Africa. Because of the time difference, I get up at like 6 or 7 a.m. to start my day. I think it's like 1 or 2 o'clock for him. I get a ton of work done from like 6 to like 9 or 10 o'clock. And then it's like, he's at home at 6. I have work to do, but I get it. Like, I have deadlines and I get them done whenever I want. So at that point, this is how Dave and I met, was at the CrossFit gym. 12 o'clock class at CrossFit. I get there at 10:30, hour and a half of stretching, chit-chatting with the guy, shooting the shit, do a nice workout, take a shower, maybe go have lunch. I had like so much free time and it was very leisurely and it felt good. So one part of me was like, how could you walk away from this? You're getting paid to go work out, right? Yeah. But the other part of me was, I knew I wasn't being true to myself. And anytime I thought about my job, I just felt miserable. Like, I was like, I had this constant fear. I don't know if it wasn't a fear, but I just felt like one day the phone's going to ring and they're going to tell me you're out. And it was a part of me towards the end there where I was like waiting for it. Like, and that dragged on for years, years, where I'm like, I'm going to get let go any day now. And I ended up staying there for like years longer than I thought I would.
Is that now, Fares, is that because you were so efficient at the job, or you saw structural changes in the company that the writing was on the wall that perhaps they were going to close the Canadian arm? Is that like which of the two?
Okay, so both. But to your second point, so what ended up shortly after I started working for Dimension Data, they were acquired by a big Japanese telecom, NTT. Nippon Telephone Telegraph, I think is what they stand for. And NTT in Japan is like what Rogers is in Canada, but probably bigger. They're a massive company and they employ some crazy number, like 500,000 people worldwide. And at the time, NTT was trying to expand their presence and they were buying up, I think in a short period of time, they bought up something like 30 companies across North America. Jeez. Ours was one of them. But at the time, they said, hey, NTT bought us, but nothing changes. And it stayed business as usual for over 10 years. But as things started to change, they had started to integrate Dimension Data into NTT. And then it kind of become apparent that the Dimension Data name was going to go away and we're all going to become NTT employees. And there was this sort of, everyone was scrambling to find a new position because they saw to your point, Richard, the writing was on the wall and things were going to happen. And I'd started to get approached by other people in the business. Hey, there's an opening with this. Do you want to do this? And this is the kind of thing that I struggled with for a while. Was I'd been with the company for so long, and in the beginning I'd kind of moved up fairly quickly and got promotions, and I moved from being a delivery engineer to an architect, and then I was doing inside sales. And I had some really good managers that really wanted to see me succeed, and they were trying to move me up, but I didn't want to. Like I knew that if I took on more responsibility within the organization, I'm going to have to do a lot more of what I don't want to do. And the pay would go up, but it wasn't like I ran the numbers in my head. I'm like, hey, I'm going to have to work 200% more and earn 20% more. Like,
didn't make sense.
Just didn't make sense. I'm like, I would much rather put in the bare minimum like I'm doing right now, get my paycheck. And so I can have free time to do the things that I really want to do. Right. This is the thing that was so hard for me was that like I didn't trying to, and don't get me wrong, there were times where I'm like, I need to take this more seriously, and I need to, if there was a new technology, I would make this effort. Like, okay, I'm going to buy the book on this and I'm going to read it. But it just felt like I was jamming torturing a square peg into like it was torture. Like it was, I mean, I would be on my computer trying to working, and
an email comes in.
Right. Yeah.
Panic,
and, like I couldn't, like, I just couldn't focus. Like my brain would just keep going to other places, other things that I wanted to be doing. I'm like, this is, like you said, torture. Like I just can't do this. So I guess it's my long-winded way of saying eventually at the start of year 2022. So at the start of 2021, I'd gotten moved to like a new team. It was like the third team that I was on in a year. And I had a new manager who was now in London. The manager had basically told me right out the gate, like, I don't know what the hell's going on. I don't even know if I'm going to have a job in 6 months. And now they're asking me to do all this stuff that I had no interest in doing. So whereas in the past, I was getting opportunities to take other jobs within the organization, I didn't really take any of those. I think the company was kind of like, we're not giving this guy any more choices. We're moving you to this team, and here's what you're going to do. And they basically wanted me to write like architectural guides on things that I had no interest in. They were making this whole shift to, anyways, I won't bore you with the details, but they were, there was all this stuff that they had me doing that I had no interest in doing. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to keep doing this. But I had told my wife, I'm like, look, I'm going to get let go soon. I know it. If I'm lucky, I put in my time and I want to get packaged out of here.
Yeah.
And hopefully that'll give me the runway to do what I want to do.
Right.
I guess like kind of to circle back to what we were talking about earlier, another thing that I will mention is that kind of growing up, I had this idea that if you worked in the trades or worked with your hands, this was a job that people who like dropped out of school or were never successful doing. I think some of that picture was painted by the fact that my father never felt like he wanted to pay any reasonable amount of money for a tradesman to do work. So if he wasn't like using the cheap free labor that he had from his sons, he was bringing in some alcoholic friend or somebody that he knew to like frame the basement for like $50 a day. And as I had this idea in my head that like all the people who do this sort of work were like bums, right? Which couldn't have been further from the truth. But
you know what, to your point though, Fares, with that, like Dave and I had a one-off just before we were speaking about this, because this is a passionate topic of mine.
Right.
I think society has been crafted into making parents feel unworthy of their children. Oh, my son's a plumber. Like, no, my son's a doctor, is a dentist. Like these high prestigious jobs, yet, 99% of doctors are like C+ students, we put them on pedestals and they're not these amazing people, but we've put an eye on the trades. And I remember when I went into high school, I was just 2 years too late and they had canceled the entire wing. Like we had a wing of the school dedicated to automotive, plumbing, metal drafting, woodworking, all these things. I'm like, I want to dive into this. I'm tired of learning the textbook. I want to get my hands in. And it was gone. It was canceled. It was like completely abandoned wing of the school. To your point, your father was reminiscing in those ideologies that have been set by society. Oh, you don't have 3 master degrees, and
right.
Who cares? Yeah. But that plumber makes more money than that doctor and dentist. Like this is what society's missing the connection. These tradespeople make more money if that's their goal. That's what they want to do, but are more successful than these white collar jobs.
Right. And the thing that I learned along the way is that more important than anything is your time. Yeah. So I lost, 5 or 6 years hanging around Dimension Data longer than I should have. And that could have been time that I was using to upskill myself and establishing, the business that I want to have, which is what I'm doing now. Yes. So, you trade in that time. Okay, maybe you're getting the money, but that's certainly not going to make you happy. But if you're doing something where you can get out of bed every day and you're super excited about going to work,
you're with your family, you're with your kids, you're traveling. Everyone's level of success is different, but you're right. It's that feeling of, I can accomplish something amazing today, not dreading the next email coming in. Is this the buyout package,
Exactly. Yeah, you said it. So there is some currency to be put on, how happy are you? And if I had to do a job that I didn't enjoy, my first question will be like, how much are they paying me? And the only reason I ask that is because how long do I have to endure this suffering for in order for me to save enough money so I can go do what I want to do? Right. And where do you draw that line? So for me, making money doing these tech jobs was solely so I could earn money, so I can buy myself the freedom to do what I want to do. But it wasn't a means to an end, like working in IT for me. So eventually, when they did let me go, like it was like a blessing. Like it was the best day for me because I had been more miserable. So I got let go in June of last year. So it's been almost a year, a little bit over a year. And yeah, actually, you know what? Before I even get to that, let me just go back real quick. So I guess like maybe 5 or 6 years ago, like somewhere along this process, I had through social media just stumbled upon, I think it was through Instagram. I found someone's like Instagram page who was like a contractor, but what he was doing was like putting a lot of like content online showing like what he was doing. He'd like renovate a bathroom and he would show like this shitty bathroom, then he'd take it apart, fix the whole thing, put it together. And I was like, wow, like, and he was a young guy and like younger than me. And he was doing this and I'd been kind of like following him over the years. And I saw him like sort of go from doing all this stuff in like his little car. And then he bought a Sprinter van and his business was growing. And I'm watching this happen online. And like through that, I started getting connected with all these other people that have social media accounts on YouTube and Instagram. And these guys are primarily content creators, but they're creating content where they're showing like how they build a dining table or whatever. And for whatever reason, I got obsessed with this. Like, I mean, if you ever talk to my wife, she's watched more carpentry and DIY how-to videos. Like when I get into something, I get like super into it. And it was like, that was all I would watch like all day, every day. If I was out, all I would be thinking of is I can't wait till I get home because these like content creators that I subscribe to put out new content and I can't wait to see what they did. Like I was like,
that's the IT in you. That's the technology in you trying to merge with the trades and fuse them together.
Yeah.
Oh
so,
man.
It's funny. Most guys are obsessed with porn and you're just obsessed with woodworking. That's awesome. Your wife must have been so happy. She's like, I don't have to worry about Ferris watching porn.
Yeah. I mean, like, you know, DIY building videos and like cooking. I'm really into cooking as well. Yeah. So like she's seen so much, like that's all I watch. Right. So as I'm watching these people, it's become like this switch goes off in my head. Like, wait a sec, like, here's an example of someone who's doing something that I want to do, and not only are they doing it, they're like uber successful at it, and they're making money, and they're supporting themselves and they can support a family. So you know, back to what you were saying earlier, Dave, about you can see the example, and then there's a kind of switch goes off in your head. You're like, oh, I can do this, and that was kind of. That was the moment for me where I knew I had to leave Dimension Data, where I was like, okay, there's other people doing what I want to do, but I'm not there right now. But I need to figure out a way to get there. I don't know exactly what the path is going to be, but I know that if I'm doing something like this and I can find a way to like pay the bills, then I've succeeded. Like that's the goal. So when they did let me go, you know, I got packaged down. I was very fortunate that I had enough runway that I can take a chance at doing something new. And I didn't know exactly what that was going to look like, but it was kind of like, okay, freedom. Well, I want to build stuff. I need more equipment to do that. I need a shop. You know, our basement wasn't finished at the time. So I told my wife, like, that playroom that you had earmarked for the kids, like that's going to be my new like shop. Sorry. But you know, sorry, not sorry. Right. Sort of sorry. Right. So I spent so much time trying to build what was like kind of like my dream, like woodworking shop in our basement. And probably like 6 to 8 months into it. So I was also like starting to get more work. Like, and I kind of now like word was getting around that like I was doing some of these jobs, and people that I had friends of friends, and they would be like, hey, somebody needs a new whatever. So I'm starting to get work, and just kind of coincidentally, there was a lady who I was trimming her house out, and she knew that I'd been kind of working out of my basement. And she said, oh, by the way, I have an office that I haven't used for like a year and a half. I'm paying rent. I'm still on the lease. Maybe you're interested in it. I was like, well, that's great, but I need a shop and an office, right? Like I'm like literally still in the process of like building my sort of dream shop in the basement. And I'm putting way too much time and effort into something that really I should have just tried to cobble something together good enough and just do work, right? But in my head, I just kind of, I get obsessed with things and I do it like all the way, which was so unnecessary. Right, exactly. Which is kind of like to my own detriment a lot, but that's another topic. So she says to me, like, go check out the shop or go check out the office. I think you're going to like it because it's attached to a shop. So I was like, okay. So I went in there, and to make a long story short, there's a carpenter who's got a big space and he's got all his equipment and tools and everything set up. The guy's almost 70. He's been doing this for like 40 plus years. He's sick and tired of it. He wants to retire. And I basically walked in and he was like, hey, like, you can have access to all of this. Like, I'm only here like 3 days a week. I work like 10 hours a week. Like, he's like, if this is something you want to do, and you know, oddly enough, a lot of the equipment that he had was like exactly what I had. So I said to him, hey, you can go sell your table saw, you can sell your planer, you can sell your joiner. I have the same table saw, I have the same I have a better dust collector. This stuff's all in my basement. I'm like, you can sell it all. I'll bring all my stuff in here. And very quickly, you know, he was a great, like, I was so fortunate to like kind of run into this guy. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. And he's been so helpful, like more than he even knows, because in the past, like, I'm kind of like self-trained through watching like 1,000 hours of YouTube. But if I have a specific question on something, sometimes it's hard to find. I can go to him and he's like, oh, this is how I've been doing it. And it just sped up my growth like significantly. So I moved into that space in like April, after basically from June until the end of last year, just trying to get my basement like where it is. And then almost as quickly as I decided that I was going to build like my basement shop, I was just forced to abandon it. Like, I just quickly moved all my equipment out of there, put it in this new shop, and all the sort of challenges that I had in my basement, like trying to get 4x8 sheets of wood down the staircase and through the door, and building a project and not even being sure if I can get it out of the basement. All of that went away. And now I have this like access to this space that I've been working out of. And it's still awesome. Early stages, but it's been awesome because I can take multiple jobs at the same time. I can do bigger jobs. I'm starting to price things like kitchens and things like that, which I would have never dreamed to be possible from like doing from my basement. So
I think we got to take a step back here. So you know, you go back to your IT days. You only knew what you knew. This was going to be it. I'm going to retire here. It's amazing. You have those changing points. Company goes through some weird times. You're like, I got to get out of here. You took a leap of faith. You took a chance. You took action, which is the premise of our show. So you dreamt bigger. You made waves in life. You took action, which then leads you to just a customer going, hey, I think you're going to like this office space I have. And then you quickly discover it was a woodworking shop. And just because you took action from the start, you continue to walk into the unknown. It led you to, holy shit, I just have completed something I never thought I could have done a year ago. And I think that's the premise we know that's the premise of each episode, is trying to tell our audience, like, listen, it starts with the baby steps. And if you don't put yourself out there, people don't know what you're doing, and you don't know where that networking leads to. And it led you to a shop where now you're pricing out kitchens, and the world is just all yours now, you know?
Absolutely.
To me, I love hearing this, Dave, and I love the successes.
Right. Yeah, I feel so lucky that something like that happened to me, but then also something like that could have never happened to me if I was at my desk configuring routers all day. So it was,
Could you imagine?
You know, they say, I guess, success is like hard work when meets luck or something like that. So I kind of got lucky that I met this lady who had the shop that she wasn't using and let me, you know, have it. And you know, as a sort of added bonus, she's redoing her whole basement, so I'm doing all the cabinetry for her there, and she's got so many more jobs on the go. So it was like just a chance meeting. It kind of changed everything. And I would have. I always imagined that I was gonna eventually move out of my basement to do something bigger. It just happened a lot faster than I was ready for. And this is the another weird thing about it too, is that when that opportunity came up, my initial reaction wasn't like, I got to take this. I had almost like, in my mind, I was like fighting it. I was like, no. I'm like, I had done so much work on my basement and everything is perfect. I just did my French cleat wall. All my tools are hung perfectly. And I've like streamlined my process so it's super efficient. Like, I'm not leaving this. But then, you know, with enough time, I'm like, wait a sec. Like, don't be an idiot here.
Yeah.
Like, okay, it's going to suck. You're going to have to move all the shit out of your basement.
Yeah.
And yes, you've just built this masterpiece, but you have to abandon it. And it's
Right.
like, you have to do what the smart thing to do is. And I like the convenience of like getting out of bed, just go down the staircase and just get to work.
Right.
But then I found like having a shop, I'm like way more efficient. Like I wake up now, and this sounds very maybe counter to a lot of maybe some of the things that you talk about, but I love getting up. I love the routine of like getting up, make breakfast, drop the kids off at school, go to work. And now I have this like 8-hour chunk of the day where I can just get down to business and do what I need to do. And I like having a little bit of that structure. Like for 15 years, there was like no structure. It was like every day was different. It was like always, you know, there'd be some day where I do a ton of work, some day where I don't do any work. Now I can have a little bit more consistency in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, it works better.
But it is exactly what we talk about, because it's doing what you want to do,
right?
Not doing what you have to do.
Right.
You didn't have to make that choice to go into woodworking. You didn't have to make the choice to establish the location that you're in right now, because you could have said to her, just like you said, no, I'm good. I'm in my basement. I'll limit myself on what I can do for a living.
Yeah.
Right.
Narrow-minded,
but instead, you were like, you know what? Hold on a second.
Yeah.
Being in my basement, even though I built this Picasso, I'm limiting myself because I can't get stuff that I want to build out of it.
Right.
So now you're like, okay, now I have this opportunity to get a shop. So even the fact that you're going into a structured, it's what works for your life. And the fact that you were able to look ahead and say, you know what, hold on a second. Don't be an idiot here. Take this opportunity now.
Yeah.
And Fares, those are the daily habits that build discipline that lead to success. And, you know, that's what's missing, I think, in societies. People don't have that structure. You know, Dave, we if anybody asks us, Dave and I, basically, it's the same thing. We're up generally very early. We're exercising and or reading and or meditating or creating our power lists. And then we're getting our day going after some nice coffee. You know, like it's pretty steady, and people know what we'd be doing if they were to say, what are you doing at 6:30, 5:30 in the morning? It's like, we know we'll be exercising, you know, that's part of our routine.
Yeah. Exercise is such a big part of like keeping, like pinning you down to a sort of schedule where you can, and I'll say this is the one thing that I kind of lost. Like I went from working a 9-to-5 job and having all the time to exercise to now I work like 24/7 and I have no time to do anything. But the one thing like that I would say, Dave, like probably for the first time in like over 10 years, I've taken an extended break from like the gym.
Yeah.
I've never taken a break this long. And it's partly because I've been putting so much of my energy into getting this thing up on its legs, but I can't wait until I have that opportunity to get back and get into the gym again. But and it sucks because that's what I want to do so badly. But I also like, I'm telling myself, okay, I have to take a step back here from that stuff. This thing is so fragile right now, this business, I need to put all my energy into it. And once I get it to where I want to be, I can start making concessions on where I'm going to be spending my time and getting that going.
Yeah. But the other thing we haven't talked about yet is what you have in your family life that's occupying the rest of your time, right? Which is so important to mention. And I bring it up, and I don't want to impose myself on you having to talk about something, but it's so important to mention. And if you could maybe just talk about that for a few minutes.
Absolutely. So I think I mentioned earlier, I got let go in June. And my wife and I had kind of talked about maybe trying for a third. We had 2 boys at the time. And we said, maybe we'll have another kid. But this is a conversation that we were kind of having when I had my old job. Obviously, when I got let go, it was like, okay, I got to like figure out how I'm going to get on my feet now. And, you know, family planning kind of takes a backseat for now. Totally unplanned, but like a week after I get let go, my wife gets pregnant. Like we found out like 3 weeks later. She's like, I think I'm pregnant. I was like, you're not pregnant. Like, that's impossible. I was like, there's no way you're pregnant. She was like, I swear I think I'm pregnant. I'm going to go buy a pregnancy test. I think we got into an argument because I'm like, don't go wasting $15 on a pregnancy test.
I just got laid off.
Right. Yeah. Like, there's no chance. She's like, I'm telling you, at this point, like our second son, James, is not even 1 yet. Like, his birthday is in July. So he's like 10 months old or something. And then she gets pregnant. She finds out she's pregnant. We're like, oh my God, like, I can't believe we're having another kid. I just lost my job. What the hell? We have a 3-bedroom house. Everything was worked out. You know, my wife and I had a room. Each kid had a room. It's all fine.
That's what the workshop in the basement's for.
Right. So we're still trying to process how we're going to handle a third kid. A couple of months pass. She goes for her first ultrasound. She comes home. She's like, we got to talk. And I'm like, what? And I knew it right away. I don't know what it is. I'm like, twins? Like, yeah.
No. Are you serious?
So, yeah. Wow. So, yeah. So I'm like, I'm always like Mr. Optimistic and positive. So, a part of me was like, okay, well, I can go down this line of thinking like, I don't have a job. I'm going to have 4 kids. Like, I'm screwed. The world's coming to an end. I don't know what I'm going to do. But, obviously it's a blessing.
Of course.
We had 2 boys. Eventually we found out she's pregnant with 2 girls, which was, amazing. Yeah. And, she delivered in February. So the girls are now 5 months old. But I feel like I went from working my 9 to 5 and having all the time in the world to, basically the day couldn't go by quick enough to like, now it's like, I mean, in the morning, like the day starts like with like a shotgun. It's like, one of the kids are in our bed at 5:30 already. And it's like, we're, changing a diaper or whatever. And then, someone's crying. Now we're bathing them and everyone's up. It's like, it's already a circus. Everyone's yelling and screaming, get all the kids dressed, whatever, get them out to school. My wife's got the girls, go to work, come home, pick up the boys. And so the day is there. I don't have a minute to do anything. Like, I literally during the day, the only free time that I have is when I'm at work. And then I got to make a decision. Like, am I going to use this time to actually put in the time to grow my business, or, respond to these messages or do whatever it is that is maybe not as high up on the list of priorities. So I've really had to think long and hard about how I manage my time and what it is I want to do. I think the big thing for us right now is like, I don't know about you guys, but I need sleep. Like I like 8 hours of sleep. I can get by with 7.
Yeah.
But, and trying to manage that situation, it's been a little bit tricky with 2 5-month-old babies.
Yeah.
We're slowly getting there. And, I'm hopeful that within the next month or 2, we can get them properly sleep trained. And when that happens, back to the whole gym discussion, my thinking is I'm probably going to start trying to get up at like 5 or 6 a.m., get a workout in there. Like the ideas of driving to a gym and working out and coming back and make those, there's no chance. That's like a 2-hour cut out of your day. I don't have 2 hours. I need to, I need to set something up in my basement. I need to go outside and run. Or
you have the word working shop you can convert now.
Exactly. Yeah, which is part of the plan, right? So now I've moved to the new shop. I was like, bonus. I can set up a gym. And now, if you have 45 minutes in a day, you can go get a really good workout in. Whereas, if you have 45 minutes in a day, you got to drive 15 minutes each way to the gym. You're not doing anything. So, like I would have loved to, go back into like a CrossFit style class and work out with other people. But at least at this stage in my life, like that's not going to happen, which I'm okay with. And at some point, maybe I'll be in a position where I could do that again, which would be great. But yeah, that's the next focus right now is getting the gym set up and then, getting the girls to sleep properly and getting back into the routine of exercise because I miss it so much. But like when I do think about it and I think that, I have this ability to eventually start exercising again, that excites me. Like that, I can do this. And because I love it. It's like, it really grounds me and it, keeps me going. The fact that I'm not doing it and I haven't gone insane is is a really good thing right now.
Yeah. Well, that's because you're concentrating on the growing of your business, right?
Right.
And that's important right now, because then, fast forward 10 years from now, when you have a whole crew of people working for you and you have the ability to say, okay, you guys take this job for today because it's a me day. And you look back on these days and be like, look at all that hard work.
Right. Yeah.
I think it's important to have, because I was going to ask you guys, should we have a discussion on that? Because there are certain people out there who go, I don't care about your feelings and bullshit, blah, blah, blah. You got to go every day to the gym. It's like, but let's be realistic here. Like, you have a family, you have kids, you have different priorities, and you're not walking in the same shoes as these other people, because you're going to need that time to focus on growing the business, to Dave's point. And I think social media, even, and some of these other individuals that have a voice, can put a lot of pressure on you to feel like you're not successful because you're not doing it their way. And I think for the audience, you just need to remember, you need to focus on you. A lot of these people have struggled for 20 years of their life, and now they got the talking piece, but for the first 20 years, they were doing nothing themselves. So you gotta do what's best for you, recognize a goal. You still haven't lost thought of the gym. It's still burning inside you. You're still looking at this alternative space in your basement for it, but you're focusing on, let's get this thing growing. Let's start building a team of people so I get my business off the ground and scale it. So
there's only 24 hours in a day, which when you break it down, it really isn't a lot. And as much as we want to pull from our sleep, it's so important.
Sleep's huge.
So important. So if you don't get those, if you don't take that 8 hours, 7 hours,
you'll never recover.
You're messed for your work day, and then you're not productive.
100%.
So you really don't even have 24 hours a day, right?
I mean, like, I don't know about you guys, but I just don't, like, I don't work without enough sleep. Like, it just the whole day is a write-off. So it all starts with a good night of sleep, and it's just so hard to plan that right now, because you don't know what's going to happen. Like, you can get to bed at 10 p.m. or 9 p.m. and be like, okay, we're gonna, I've set myself up for 8 hours of sleep tonight, and 3 hours later, kids running in your room like, hey, I peed my diaper. And you're like, oh, okay. Now you're changing a diaper at midnight, and you get back into bed and you're like, can't sleep. And you're playing that game. Like, if I fall asleep now,
I'll get 5 hours, and I can
get 4 hours. Then you're just like, fuck it, I'm not looking at my watch anymore. I'm like, you end up getting like a couple hours of sleep, wake up, all right, let's go.
So I wanted to ask you, Fares, now that you are 6 months into your own shop and stuff, and almost, and into ultimately your own business, almost within a short period of time running your own business, what is one word of advice, looking back at the start, that you can give our listeners?
I heard a quote once that stuck with me, and I don't remember who I should credit it to, but I heard it on the Neil deGrasse Tyson podcast. Maybe he coined it, I'm not sure. But the quote was something like, even the longest journey starts with a single step. So one thing I always remember is, and I say this to my wife all the time, the time is going to go by anyways. So if you're not going to start something because you think like, oh, it's going to take me 5 years to get this thing off the ground. Well, 5 years from now, you're going to say, shit, I wish I started that 5 years ago. Yeah. So for me, like, I just turned 40. I'm basically starting a whole new career. There was definitely a part of me that was like, oh, you're too old to do any of this, which I don't subscribe to that belief. That was kind of like the loser talk, but I could see how a lot of people might think that. But I was like, hey, I'm healthy. I go to the gym. I mean, what's 40? Like, I'm sure I'm in as good as health as maybe my parents were in their 30s. So I feel like I bought myself another 10 years or something like that. Of course. Right. So I'm like, the time's going to go by anyways. And if you told me right now, like, hey, by the time you're 45, you're going to have a very successful business doing exactly what you love, but you're going to have to eat plates of shit for 5 years. That's fine. I'll do that. So
sure.
The time's going to go by anyways. And even the longest journey starts with a single step. So it was like, get the basement shop set up and have something reasonable enough to do a commission job, and then keep growing from there, keep watering that plant, and see where it goes.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Well,
let's plug. Sorry, I just wanted to plug your company first.
Sure. Yeah, I'm terrible with the whole social media thing. Like my wife is always getting on my back about it, and I've like given her control.
Time to hire a social media manager.
Right. Yeah, but I do have a Instagram page, and I'm pulling up my phone right here because I want to make sure I plug it properly. But the name of the company is That Would Work, which is kind of like a pun. Like I couldn't come up with a name. And I think my sister and my wife were like feeding me all these ideas. And at one point in the conversation, they came up with a name, and I was like, "Yeah, that would work." And I was like, "Would work?
That would work.
That's the name. That would work." And I'm like,
That's awesome.
Just ran with it. And I thought, "Oh, this is genius. Nobody's going to have that name, right?" And then, of course, I find out like, yeah, that's a name that somebody has. And, like, there's no Instagram account. There's no website. Of course, the .com and the .ca are registered to somebody who wants like bags of money for it.
Yeah, for sure.
That. So I have That Would _work on Instagram.
Awesome.
And
we'll have to give it a follow.
Website. Yeah, right on. Yeah. I'm working on getting the website set up, which is thatwouldwork.co. So I thought like .company. There's nothing there right now, but eventually I hope to start showcasing some of the work that I do, put all my contact information in there, and get all that stuff going. So I got to get on that, and it will happen soon. I've just been overwhelmed with jobs, which I guess is a good thing. So
very much so. Yeah. Well, you just play a little catch up with everything else.
Absolutely.
Well, Fares, I think out of all the interviews, yours has really tugged at those emotional heartstrings too, because I'm sure for Dave, but for me, it's like I could feel myself back in the police car going, oh my God, another day of just no challenge in life, no planning, nothing happening here. I want more in life. And it was just so relatable in every, I think our listeners will definitely the same. So thank you so much. And
of course, thank you guys.
We're gonna stay in touch with you. We try to do that with all of our guests on the show to see where they are like in the next year as we enter season 3 in a few months and stuff like that. So we'll reach out and see how the business has grown.
Absolutely. Thank you guys.
Awesome. Well, thanks for everyone for tuning in and subscribing. And, as we always say, this was a great episode to listen to and to learn from. And hopefully you've learned a few things. If you enjoyed it, please share it. If you didn't enjoy it, make sure you share it anyways with someone who might.
Absolutely. Dave, where can we find you on social media?
I'm on LinkedIn and Instagram, David A. Moskowitz.
And you can find yours truly, Richard.DiBiase on Instagram, LinkedIn. Until next time, remember to dream bigger, make waves, and take action in life. We'll talk to you on our next episode.
Have a good day.
Take care.
Thanks.